My first attempt, I'm really gonna try to not repeat it if I can, but the concept I really want to talk about is this whole idea of multi-dimensions, maybe this being some kind of simulation, maybe this being something a little bit different anyway, and what is our experience here. And ultimately those things, even though they're interconnected, the experience part of it is irrelevant to that. The experience is the experience, right? And going with this whole multi-dimensional concept, basically one of the things to look at, and I have to disclaim here, I am not a scientist, I don't have PhD in anything, this is my rambling based on the stuff I watched, so you are free to skip it and just go on to somebody who's smarter than me. But hey, it might be useful anyway, right? So, you know, these paradoxes we see everywhere, paradoxes that look like paradoxes to us, but, you know, in fact could be the pictures of something that comes from a slightly higher dimension, right? And I mean, this whole multidimensional aspect as some nice, let's say, storyline that explains it, you know, as far as boxes and storage spaces are concerned. Most of us know about it, right? The idea that basically in a two-dimensional world you have a desk, and the desk has limited space for you to organize your stuff. So, you know, you just can spread it out, and that's all you can do with it. If you add a dimension, you can start adding shelf space, you can just pick up, and wow, amazing, right? You have so much more storage space, you can just do so much more. You can go one shelf up, second shelf up, whatever, you know, sky's the limit basically. But you do eventually maybe also run out of possibilities or practical possibilities. And to us, we're out of space. But comes a four-dimensional being and say, well, why don't you just move into the fourth dimension, right? We don't see it. Just like a two-dimensional being doesn't see the shelf that we've just put stuff on, and if we take it off the shelf, it magically appears for them. Same if somebody puts something in the fourth dimensional, they can bring it out, and for us, it just appears out of nowhere. Basically, that's the whole concept, right? Some kind of, let's say, strange crystal structure that we just are totally oblivious to. And yet, those multifaceted aspects of it are maybe those paradoxes we see. Of course, I mean, this is, you know, very, very simple stuff. And I gave it a little bit of thought, really, as to the way I see things. And there are two concepts I really want to talk about. And these concepts stem from the need to give something an image, a picture. You know, even the most brilliant minds were unable to come up with a solution to a problem if they weren't able to get a simple picture of it. You need to be able to see something with your own imagination, find an answer of some sort, right? Some very simple concept you can follow, because without, you know, that, you lose your bearings. You just don't know where the horizon is, and you just keep turning around. Right? Now, you know, I gave this thing a bit of an idea, yeah, for myself. And I like this because one of the concepts that really flows into this with me is computer language. And I mean, if we look at basic computer language, you know, we get 1 and 0, yeah, that's a basic binary structure, ones and zeros. Then, you know, if you want to get a little bit higher than that, you add more bits or more digits, and you go into, for example, the byte, the 8-bit structure. Now then you can go 16, 32, and 64-bit. If you really think about it, I mean, ultimately, this is the beauty of it. Why I think computers are able to do things that we are able to do what the computers can do today, but in the future it's gonna go beyond that most likely. And the reason why is because computers, in some way, form mathematical models which we could, in fact, kind of perceive as being multidimensional. Math does it very well, even though it might be a little bit beyond our understanding, but math does it beautifully. Why not computer language, right? The way it's structured. If you think of 1 and 0, that's two dimensionals, you add a couple more and you just add more dimensions if you like, right? And the funny thing is you can add dimensions on top of dimensions as well, because once you have 8 bits and you go to 64-bit, well, guess what? That's 8 times 8 times 8, yeah? I mean, 8 times 8, yeah, that's one structure, that's 64 bits. And now we've got 64-bit computing, and that's made up of 8 octets. I researched that. Yeah, great, right? Anyways, so what's interesting for me, anyway, is the nature of the universe in this whole thing. And I'm going to mix here things again, because I see these as different facets of this concept, yeah, as in different facets of this paradox, maybe. I'm mixing things, I know, but at least maybe there's some grain of truth somewhere along the way. Might help somebody form some idea of it, I don't know, we'll see, yeah? So, you know, I've come across this idea that we're somehow lucky, right? That somehow we are in this incredibly rare event where all these things just were perfectly matched and we just happen to exist, like the, you know, the Higgs boson being the exact weight that it needs to be for the, you know, universe to form. If it was any bit less or lighter, then, you know, nothing would really form, and or rather, yeah, and if it was a bit heavier, really what would happen is we'd just collapse into basically a clump of something, I don't know what. And what really for me here is key is that, you know, this incredibly rare phenomenon that just happened to be right and just happened to be this and that. Well, I saw a film a long time ago which really gives a beautiful answer for me anyway. And it's a silly scenario. There's a boy and a girl in a very unlikely situation, and he turns to her and says, what's the chance of us being here right now, right like this? And she looks at him and says, I don't know. And he says, well, it's exactly 100%. Exactly 100%, because we are here. And this is my contention. There is no chance event here. This is exactly 100% scenario, right? If we look at the sea, let's say the ocean of infinite probability, our probability is exactly definite probability. We are 100% probability because we are on the crest of that wave, let's say, flowing through the ocean, let's say, of infinite probabilities. Behind us one type of nothingness, ahead of us another type of nothingness, and we are the thing that actually coalesces into some form. And that's the whole complexity of us. Around us infinite possibilities, but what we really have is this. And the funny thing is, of course, the consciousness, as is being found out by scientists, can structure that, can shape that, can direct that. Just like a surfer on a wave decides to turn left or right, he keeps riding the same wave maybe, but one left or one direction or the other, right? But that's the point. We are on the wave. It's 100% probability. Now, this means that basically you know, if we figure out the mechanics of how this flows, we can harness this power, right? And funny thing for me is this, that we are these three-dimensional beings moving through a world of multi-dimensions. It's possible we have a higher dimensional aspect to ourselves. I mean, we having, in fact, our own magnetic field around us that we create, right? So maybe we do have aspects of ourselves that we are unaware of, just like we do radiate infrared light. It's still light. We actually are light radiating beings, just the way we are made of, you know, the universe, right? I mean, these are some crazy concepts. And what this brings me down to is, I'm coming back to this computer language, right? Because, you know, the thing is, language defines us. If you look at English and you look at around you, basically it's a world of everyday common people, yes? And as they look at it and they observe the world, you see the grass is green, you see the people, you see all the vehicles around you, you see the cars, and that's what is, that's what outside they are, right? And that's simple tenses versus continuous, what is happening to them, what they're doing, yeah? So there's a tree, right? There's a dog, but the dog is running around the tree, and the tree is swaying in the wind. So these are three-dimensional concepts, maybe four if we add the time factor, and this is the language we use, and this is the language which we perceive in the world and which in fact structures the way we perceive the world. It defines us. So what if we could define another language? And I mean, if you think about it, mathematics and computer language is exactly that. It's a completely new type of idea, really. Those who can understand it see much more. It's a very simple fact. Just talk to anybody who really gets math. And what's beautiful here is that we get more access to this as we go along. And the crazy thing is that now we are defining this new language, which again structures our definition of what we see out there. It shapes our reality, if you like. And it starts to do the 1 and 0. Ain't that a kick?